So I saw a stat the other day that literally stopped me in my tracks. It was a Harvard study of adult development, and it's one of the longest running studies out there when it comes to human happiness. And what this study said was that relationship satisfaction at 50 is a better predictor of your health at 80 than your cholesterol levels. Now, think about that. It's not your diet, it's not your gym routine, it's your relationships. So, today we're going to go straight there, talking about love, sex, depth with someone that I am so excited for you to meet. So, for those of you that haven't been here before, welcome to the Soulful CEO Path. This is a podcast for ambitious, soul led entrepreneurs who are building wildly abundant and aligned businesses that ripple out positive effects into the world. And today, my guest is Jacqueline Stevens, and she is on a mission to make dating delicious again. She's a life and leadership and love coach, helping driven signals date with depth, build confidence, and secure soul expanding relationships. And I've had the pleasure of working with Jacqueline as she's been developing her disruptive dating method. So we're going to talk all about that, but all again about like everything to do with love. So Jacqueline,
I'm
welcome
so
to the show.
excited to be here, Kristin. I feel like I don't want to say long overdue, but I've been waiting to have this conversation for you for a long time. So excited to be here.
It
Yeah.
Yes, it is long overdue. It totally is. And I'm just excited that we get to bring some of the conversations that we have personally inside of our coaching container out into this conversation in this room because I love the way that you think about relationships and I love the way that you think about dating. And you have such a unique category of one when it comes to that work. So why don't we just like double click on that stat that I shared? Because you and I had an offline conversation just briefly a little bit about this. So why do you think love and connection has such a deep, not only like emotional impact on us, but physiological
Oh,
impact on
such a
us?
good question. And I would just say it's because the only reason why we're here is because of relationships. So, especially as humans, our gestation period is long, a long time. We need a lot of investments to become fully functional. I mean, most kids don't walk until they're about 1 years old. And so we are so reliant on our caretakers, primary caretakers, siblings, parents. And so it makes a lot of sense to me if you really look at it from this biological lens. But I also think it's because from my work, there's this deep spiritual purpose to relationships. So everything from your formative years, that root, that security, all the way up into that higher energy of like the purpose. We get so much purpose through relationships as well.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's like, I know when you start talking about it like that, is like it's one of these things that is biologically like
Yeah.
wired into us as human beings. And, we don't learn these things
No.
though. Most of us don't learn these things. We learn them through modeling and we learn them through, media and we learn it through kind of the environments that we're in. But to actually create these like deep, juicy, to use your word, relationships, takes practice and it takes work.
It's a
And so
skill
we're
set
gonna
for
like talk
sure.
about that.
Yeah, it's a skill set, and I think that,
Yeah.
we just are naturally learning things through the way that our parents relate, through the society, the religion, the political party that we're in. And so when we start to kind of unravel that, it makes a lot more sense why we relate the way that we do. And so I'm so excited to dive in.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, a lot of the work that you do with people is
Yeah.
with dating. And so I'd love to like for you to talk a little bit about your disruptive dating method and your philosophy around dating, because I think what's really unique about how you talk about dating is that it's kind of similar to how I talk about business, is like using it as a vehicle to do your self work in the world. And what I love about how you position dating is that it's not just about finding the partner. It's about who you become and the process along the way that actually can make
Yeah.
dating juicy again. So can you talk to us a little
Yeah.
bit about that?
So, when I first start working with people, and I would just say most people in general. So, if someone's listening to this and this is you, I see you, I feel you. But, most of us don't feel good about dating, right? It doesn't feel inspiring. So, in terms of the emotional response, we can feel drained, we can feel depleted. And a lot of people don't even want to engage in dating because they've had experiences where they have less energy because of dating. And so, through how I teach people dating and relationships, it's allowing it to feel joyful and abundant. So, first, we just have to address that, like, it doesn't feel like that. And so, a lot of times, dating feels like a pressure cooker, right? Like this,
Yeah, this one post I remember, you're like, "Dating is like
yeah.
heaven and hell at the same time." And
And
so,
so,
yeah.
yeah, I love this idea of like thinking about it like it's this pressure cooker. I posted today about how we most people want their soulmate. They want to meet their soulmate tomorrow, but there's all of these other layers of like getting to that. It's almost like having a ankle that you've twisted and then registering for a marathon the next day. Like there's some like steps in between. And so how I approach dating and what I teach through my disruptive dating method is that dating is this personal development playground, right? Because dating is a mirror for us. And as soon as we start to shift from not blaming the other sex, the other gender, the other person, the dating apps, and we start to take accountability, everything starts to shift. And so I walk people through a really amazing method that I developed with you, Kristen, on how to get there. And I truly embody this work in terms of dating can feel good. It doesn't have to feel like shit. And that doesn't mean that there aren't going to be moments that do feel like shit. Welcome to being human. This is a really vulnerable space, especially because most of the people that I coach are really high achievers. And so to open your heart is a totally different skill. And so there will be skin in the game, but um, keeping yourself in the arena of relationships is what is going to propel you to the people that you're supposed to meet, the experiences that you're supposed to have, and ultimately a really secure, equitable, and juicy partnership.
Yeah, so good. And I mean, that just reminds me as we're talking through this is like all of your work is so applicable to people who are dating and who are
Yeah.
in relationships because it's
Mm.
really one of the same. It's like me and my partner are coming up to our 5-year dating anniversary this
Congrats.
weekend. And, and like, yeah, thank you. And like, I've had a bit of a sordid history when it comes to relationships. I've had to learn the
Mhm.
hard way when it comes to that area of my life. And one of the things that I've really, noticed, or one thing that I guess I've done differently in this relationship, which has really helped, is when I know myself a lot better. But two, it's like the work is there and like it's not going to just be always easy and I'm not going to eject when it gets hard. It's like all of those things that you teach people in the dating arena apply to the
Totally.
relationship arena too. And if we try to skip those,
Yeah,
it
and I
doesn't
love that
really
you said
work.
that. I think I've spent the most time in the dating arena. I dated in Los Angeles, I dated in San Francisco. I've dated in big cities where there's a lot of options. And honestly, it doesn't even matter if you're in Kansas City, you're probably dealing with some of the same struggles as you are in these larger arenas. But there's this idea that we have all of these choices, which is true, but you only have so much time. And so, again, getting an understanding of these issues while you're in dating just simply prepares you for while you're in relationship. But I think a lot of people, especially some of my married friends, don't recognize the value of this work because I think a lot of people think that once they're married, it's done, like, oh, ta-da, like I've got the ring and this is how we operate. But like you said, it doesn't matter what level of relationship that you're in. The work that I teach, this method is going to support you again to getting to what it is that you want. And that's why I just am like so excited about it, like to get this out to get this out to
Yeah.
people.
It's it, it's truly disruptive what you're doing and using relationship as this like vehicle to like be more conscious, be more connected to your spiritual path, to each other, and just create these more equitable, beautiful relationships in the world. So I am. I'm like your number one fan. I'm always like, she's gonna be on.
Yeah,
She's
I
gonna be
can't
signing my
wait.
book one of these days. It's like I
Well, and I
see it. I
think
see it for you.
I was gonna
But
just
let's
pop
talk.
in. The
Yeah, go
other
ahead.
thing to think about is like everything that we do is a relationship, right? How you spend your money is a relationship. How you show up with your family, right? How you show up at the gym, all of these have to do with relationships. And so, of course, I teach this through the lens of dating, but Y when you learn this stuff, it's like you can start to apply this change method to every area, of your life. So, um,
Yeah,
and I'm curious, can I
totally.
ask you a question, Kristen?
Yes,
I'm just so
tables are
curious
turned.
because
Yes.
I think that, I always have felt like we have so much synergy in what we did in corporate and now what we do in terms of our work. But just in terms of like you and your relationships, like I know you went through a divorce, it shifted with your business, but I'm just curious to hear how relationship has been reflected also with your work.
Yeah, I mean, as I kind of alluded to, is like I've always my work has been had a pretty solid trajectory with that since my early 20s. It was
Mhm.
something that I could control. It was something that I could, if I saw if like I put this amount of effort in,
Yeah.
I'll get this result. And so that was really an area where I'm like, okay, I
Yeah.
know how to
Super
win over
secure.
here.
Yeah.
I know what to do. Exactly, and it's like I could, in corporate, it was even easier because it was like, "Okay, this is how you climb the corporate ladder. This is how you win at the corporate game," and I was like, figured out the rules and just did it, and I was like, "Okay." Relationship was very different for me because there's another person involved in there, and it's not so, if you do this and you do that. And, talk about, like, modeling and upbringing and all of those kind of things. I mean, my parents are still together, they just had their 70th birthdays, and, um they're lovely and I had a great upbringing. I'm not complaining. And at the same time, there's some things around love and relationships and affection and connection and security that weren't modeled to me in the way that my
Need
energetic
it.
blueprint needed.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And so it took a little while to figure that out. And unfortunately, it was like not just like little relationships, they were marriages and that caused like big things. And big, there were big upheavals and like marriages, divorces. And then I read this book where I think I was listening to a podcast and it was about high functioning
Mhm.
codependence. And in my last relationship, addiction played out, that was a big part of it, and with my partner. And that's ultimately
Mhm.
why our relationship ended. And I remember where I somehow got involved with his like that he was going to one
Yeah.
of those step program things. I can't remember exactly what it was called. And then part of their thing was like, well, as the partner, you should go to your like codependence anonymous. And
Mhm.
I rejected that so hard because I'm like, I'm not codependent. I have been like so
Yeah.
independent my entire life. I've like always done my own thing. Like I don't need anyone. I did not understand what it meant to be a
Yeah.
high functioning codependent. And then once that unlocked for me, I was like, oh
I
shoot.
see
Yeah,
it.
that's what was
Yeah.
happening. Yeah. So I share all of that because I think it's important, like to your point, is like relationship for me has been this huge area of self-development and growth and it hasn't been
Yeah.
fun and a lot like previously, but it's allowed me to get to this place where I
Mm.
know myself so deeply. I now understand how to be in relationship. I get to choose my own um modeling for that and what I
Yeah,
want it to look like. So
for
yeah, it's
sure.
been a journey
Well,
though.
and what I love about what you're talking about is we all have this programming that we're given by our caretakers. Whether we want to acknowledge it or not, it's installed. We're like an iOS system. And until we move through some upgrades, we're going to be operating in that old model. And so, not that there's always massive problems with that old model. But what I love that you said is you're like, based on what I needed, I didn't get my needs weren't satiated, right? Like there were things that I didn't get, and then we start to, engage with those in sometimes a lot more of a shadowy way when we don't know that that's there, and so, again, this is what I love about relationships is, like, even though you had to go through some challenging things, those were the mirrors, and you took the opportunity to really, like, learn and move through those. So I'm just so glad glad that you shared that with me. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thanks for asking. So let's talk a little bit about the world of modern dating because I remember I when I separated from my husband, my ex-husband, it was during COVID and it was in the midst of COVID and I was living by myself now and I just had this like moment of like I'm gonna be by myself for the rest of my life because I'm just like not able to meet anyone or get out there or whatever. And the thought of going online and dating again was so heavy. Luckily, my
Yeah.
path didn't turn out to even need that. It was just like, these synergies. And I know you talk about this a lot of like not um, relying on the online space. You can actually meet people lots of places. So let's talk about that because I know a lot of people
Right.
that I know who are single have this like, oh my God, like dating in today's
Yeah.
modern world is not fun. So tell me a little bit, tell us a little bit around like your take on modern dating and how you support
Yeah.
your clients to not only make it tolerable, but actually really
Yeah.
enjoyable.
So I think when we talk about dating now, and especially when we talk about modern dating, we think about modern energies like technology, right? Like dating apps. And I think dating apps can be, again, a really great tool. I'm a proponent of apps for the reason that I think it helps you to get really clear on your energetic blueprint, right? Like how you're presenting yourself to the world. Um, it's an easy way to get yourself into the dating arena, and it's not the one that feels the best, right? So I would never recommend like, "Oh, only do this." There's, endless ways to meet people, and I'm gonna bring in like a funny I made this reel recently about how, um I'm just gonna be, like, vulgar, is that, like, before dating apps, we all found a way to bang, right? Like, everybody found a way to, like, meet people and, like, make out and, like, date and have sex. Everybody was doing that long or
Yeah, just
we were
fine.
having a
Yeah.
heyday, right? Like, everyone was having a good time, and apps have actually really changed that because we're having to put a lot more qualifiers in front that aren't necessarily great qualifiers. Like, you meet people, you feel a vibe, you smell their pheromones, you see how they're moving and engaging with the barista, and so I like to think that I am like the best flirt. And so that's why I teach this work so well. But you have to like turn it up. And one of the ways that I do that with people is really supporting them to understand what their energy is around dating because how we show up is what we're attracting. And so once you start to really shift your
Right.
energy, everything starts to change. And you might have had a million dates on a dating app, but then you meet someone who's like a potential client, like you and, Ryan did. So there's all these different ways that we can meet. And again, when you're approaching dating like a personal development playground, you just can't lose. And I also I love this saying, leave people better than when you found them. And I, this week got 2 voice notes, one of which I asked for and the other one which was totally unsolicited from men that I used to date, just, like, reminiscing about, like, all the things that they loved about dating me, and we're still in relationship and a friendship, but, like, how amazing is it that I got to make an impact on all of these different men, and I truly believe that women, whether we like it or not, we are the field trainers for men's behavior. And the more you stand like the embodied queen and goddess that we are, the less we tolerate, and men have no option but to meet us. And if they don't, then it makes it really easy for us um, to be discerning and to say no. So those are my thoughts on modern dating.
Yeah. I love that you just went there though too. You're like, everyone was doing just fine
Yeah.
before the apps. Then the apps come in and it's like, okay, we got to use the apps. It's like, well, why? Why can't you meet someone at a coffee shop or like, at your yoga class or whatever? But to your point is like, you have to kind of approach it in that
Yeah.
way, like a playground. It's like, what's the worst that can happen? I think you put out a challenge maybe on your social media, or maybe we were just talking about it as like
Yes.
flirt with
Yeah.
someone today, and it's like, just it doesn't matter. It's not about it needing to
Exactly.
go somewhere, but, like, it's the
Yeah, and
energy
being just
around it.
totally not attached. And I like to think of it like this. When I'm in my like flirting queen goddess energy, the only men that are going to want me are like men that are entertained by that or men that like see it and want it. And I'm gonna scare a whole bunch of other
Yeah.
people off, which is what I do, you know? I'm like, I'm scary. It's scary to think about like dating a dating coach or someone that knows a lot about relationships because that means that men can't play games. They can see that I'm like smart enough to not be operating in that level. And so it disqualifies a lot of people, which also is like amazing.
Totally. Well, I'm glad, like, just because you brought up games, that can be something that I think a lot of people feel like they have to
Yeah.
navigate when it comes to dating and relationships, and it can be really frustrating, and it's like some of these things, like, do I call him? Does he call me? When do we have sex? When is it okay? Or when does it, those types of things. So, how do you usually help people navigate some of these things okay, how do I ask this question better?
Yeah.
When you're excited about meeting someone and you just wanna go all
Yeah.
in, and maybe that's just me, but it's like you're excited about wanting to meet someone and you just wanna go all in. But then also getting that it's dating, it's
Yeah.
one step at a time, and it's not about playing games, but it's about getting to know
Right.
the person and all of that. How do you help people navigate that portion
Yeah,
of
so
the
one of the
relationship?
things that I'm really brilliant at is identifying patterns. And so one of the things I do when I onboard my clients is get an understanding of what their attachment style is. And so when we know what our pattern is, then we can work better with our pattern. But I also want to validate that it is so confusing in dating. Not only do we have endless apps and what seems like endless options, and you can date on a global perspective, but we also have social media. And so there's a lot of advice and a lot of insight from people that um I'm not sure what their qualifications are, but it's a lot of noise to cut through and especially in terms of like masculine feminine energy that's like gotten a lot of attention over the last 5 years. I think there's a lot of great things to it. But ultimately I help people to understand their energetics and what's blocking them in relationship. And so each person, it's going to look really personal. And ultimately, when you're really clear on what your values are and when you know what you want, it's not always about pacing because there's times when it's like you're throwing everything up and you're like, you feel the movement of the magnetism and you like want to move in quickly. But if that's a pattern for someone that's like, oh, that's how I tend to show up in relationship, then it's like, okay, then let's look at this in a little bit of a different way. So does that does that make sense?
I like that. It's like rather than putting all
Yeah.
these rules on it, it's more like, are you moving from an integrated conscious place or are you moving from a patterned
Yes.
unconscious pattern? And then regardless, if as long as you're moving from a conscious place is what you're saying and integrated, then have sex on the first
And
date if you want. Like, call them right
Totally.
after you
And I
see
have a
them.
client, it's actually one of my favorite success stories. This woman, I had worked with her, she went through this big breakup. They were like cohabitating when we started working together. And at first she thought she was going to rehab the relationship, but then it ended up being like moving through the breakup. And we did all this work. We did disruptive dating and set her up so that when she stepped back into the dating arena, she was going to be golden. And she moves to Philadelphia And she goes on one date on Hinge with one guy and sleeps with him on the first date. And they live together. They've been together for over a year. They're like each other's persons in this season of where they're at in life. And it's just been super cool to watch that, like, when you have that kind of clarity, it's not about the dating is not a numbers game, it's an alignment game.
That's gonna be a little the sound bite that we pull out of this whole episode. Yeah, because I think some people do, they approach it like a
Yeah.
date and a numbers game, right? And I know I did when I was dating at in between relationships. Well, it wasn't necessarily numbers, but I
Yeah.
treated it like a job. Like it was like, okay, I'm gonna come home from work and I'm gonna put in some
Yep.
hours
Yeah.
tonight on the app. And I mean, to some degree, I guess you kind of have to, but also
I
it's
think
like, does
that's
it
an
have to be
important
like
part of the
that, or can it be?
process. I mean, I did that too. I left my corporate career and a long-term relationship at the same time. And so, the work that
Mhm,
I do is built from my own dysfunction in dating. Like, how do I not do the things that I did in the past that got me into that kind of relationship? How do I build something new? And that is really where this method was born. But I think that there isn't I think we need to go through different phases. Everyone's is going to look different, but there's going to be times where you're hitting the apps hard. And I think that that's what they're there for. And if you're listening to this and that's where you're at and you keep hitting the same thing over and over, then that's your invitation to follow me on Instagram. Yeah.
yeah, totally. There's many invitations to follow you from this conversation. Your content's so good. I wanna yeah, I wanna talk a little bit about
Yeah.
y patterns, because I know that this can be a big thing that holds people back, and, there's we all have people in our life who I can speak for myself, is like, there's people in my life where I look at them, I'm like, "They're like, what is going on? Like, you are a 10 out of 10 in every single area in my eyes." And then just when it comes to dating and relationships, they just can't seem to
Yeah.
make it happen. And then there's other people who just seem to have this like horseshoe up their ass, right? They're like just managed to like find the guy. It's easy, go on that one date, and it's like their person forever. What do you think is
Yeah.
happening there?
I mean, I'll speak specifically to women, because that's who we are, and that's primarily who I work with, and there's something with the heart. And I think the woman that you're describing as, like, has a horseshoe up her ass is and this would have been really triggering for me before, but she's in her feminine energy in terms of, she's open and she's probably really emotionally expressive with her partner. She's giving him a nourishment that he needs. And I think a lot of times with women that are really ambitious and who are badasses in their career, when it comes to dating, we're so used to getting that dopamine, like, through our career, that we don't know how to operate in relationship. And so there's part of our heart that's closed. Usually it has to do with we're not communicating in the way that, we need to show a man that we're, like, interested and available emotionally available. And, I do so much work with energy, but this is one of my favorite things that I learned because I remember when I heard it, I was like, "That tracks." But there's an energetic, like, this cord between our cervix and our jaw. And so if we're not aware of what we're feeling, um, and we're not communicating it, then we're shut down, right? Like there's a element of like being shut down in the heart. Um, and so that's basically the work that I help women to do is to like understand um how how you're showing up and not just how, but like how do we change it, right? To get again back into alignment. And I think the good news for anyone who's listening is that, this work doesn't require you to put on more masks. It actually is you taking them off. And so you get to just like come home to like who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. There's nothing more special than being in relationship, whether it be dating or long-term relationship. And I can speak to this now because I
Mhm.
feel it now and I haven't actually ever felt this before. But it's like, yeah, being
Yeah.
fully home and to that tracks so well is like actually just being able to be
Yeah.
all of you and like the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it. And so to your point of like not having any masks on, but I think there's a self-trust
Yeah.
piece there first. It's not actually
Totally.
about the other
No.
person. Um, I mean, there's going to be people who like reject and accept it for sure, but the work is
Mhm.
actually on our side to accept that those parts of us and not feel like, oh, we got to have it all this me,
Totally.
have it all together. Like, always be like good,
There's
the good,
always a
good.
silver
Like, don't ever take
lining.
up too much
Yeah.
space or be too annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, and then it's
Mhm.
just there's so much freedom in all of that. Not only for I
For
found for myself,
them.
but for the
Yeah.
other person.
And,
Yes.
women we can complain a lot about how, oh, we're the ones that are doing all the work and, like, "Ugh, we're the ones that care about relationships," but that's actually our superpower. And so instead of like complaining about that, I'm the steward of this relationship. Women are the initiators of men into this like deeper spiritual depth. And so instead of like wearing that as like, oh, woe is me, I'm like, like, let me rise from these ashes. I know exactly the kind of
Yeah.
relationship that I'm going to create. And I love what you're saying about feeling like you can be whole. And this isn't the pinnacle of being in an interdependent relationship, right? The old relationships you were in were codependent. Yeah,
We got
we
there. Yes.
did. Yeah. And so we're always arriving at these deeper levels, right? But like what you're saying is like, I can show Ryan these like parts of myself that like don't have it all together, like feel a little chaotic and be an invitation for him to hold presence for you. And also for him to come to you and say, like, I don't feel like I have it all together either. That's again, leadership. This is energy leadership, what I support people in moving through, because if you're upset with the way that men are treating you, it's just a reflection generally of how you're treating yourself.
We never
I
want to admit
know
that, but it's yeah, and when we do, it's so
it is
annoying. It's so
annoying.
freaking
And,
annoying.
I do think that men are going through this stage of beautiful relearning. It's such an opportunity for them. But I also think that if you're a woman who's dating and you want to be ahead of other women, then stepping into this work about accountability has been super profound for me. And I will still look back at old relationships and think about like how I could have shown up differently, but not from a place of, oh, I wish I would have done that and we'd still be together, but more so about like, oh my gosh, like I can see how I could have made a different impact, or I know I want to offer that to a partner moving forward. That's the thing that I didn't do. So again, taking that ownership and accountability, the more we do that, the more we're showing someone this is the bar in order to be in relationship with me.
Oh, it's beautiful. And maybe we'll just wrap this conversation with kind of going in that direction. You talk about these
Mhm.
equitable relationships, deep
Mhm.
equitable relationships. So, why don't we have a little conversation around that, around what that actually looks like? Because I kind of see that as almost like
Yeah.
the goal, even
Yeah.
though it's probably the wrong word for it. But it's like, what's the
Yeah.
purpose of putting in all this work and like, if it's not the
Mhm.
relationship, it's like or finding like the one person, but more to have these deep
Yep.
equitable relationships because to link it back to that stat at the beginning, it's not about being in
Exactly.
a marriage. It's about being in healthy
Yes.
relationships in your life, which can look a lot
Exactly.
of different
Yeah,
ways.
so I love to use the word secure because secure means we can build from here, right? It's like the root, the foundation. We've defined what this relationship is. We know where this relationship is going. That security. That's what allows us to be able to be free, who we are, So that's the secure part. Deep to me means, again, not on the surface level. So it's not the what's for dinner tonight, honey relationship. It's like talking about the atrocities of the world and what we're doing with our work to make impact in our communities. It's talking about like our feelings, our wants, our desires. So relationships that have these like deep roots. And then equitable, I love this. And this is like a newer addition because I think that this is so imperative to this work, especially the work that I do with women and with men, because women are now at the place where we get to choose whose genes get to be expressed. Like we choose. And even on a biological level, the egg is so choosy about what sperm that she says yes to. And this is the most beautiful biological example that I think that women, we really are the leaders. And we get to make the choices and say again, what is and isn't acceptable behavior. I think in society, but also just in terms of like dating. And so equity means like both people are equally invested. We're not keeping track. And there might be times where you give a little bit more, but there are also going to be times where you're able to be supported. And so this idea of both partners really being fully invested, and not relying on these um, traditional norms, but also being able to create how each person expresses their energy in relationship. And then juicy, my favorite, because it truly is like expansive. I mean, if you're talking romantic relationships, which is what I love talking about, we're talking about sex. And this is, again, a playground. This is a place that you get to grow and you get to heal. And you can integrate all of these shadowy parts of yourself into this space that feels really beautiful and supportive and healing for both of you. And so it's really interesting. Most of my clients at one point or another in our work have said something like, I'm a really sexual person. And I I just wanna, like, normalize that, like, most people are, most people are, and again, if we look back at why I think this relationship is important, most of us have come from an active sex. And so what happens after disruptive dating, I'm sure will be a program that's more specifically around intimacy and this part of like really expressing yourself. But it's so important to think about this even in terms of dating, because who do we give access to? Who do I savor this for? But those are the big pinnacles of disruptive dating and why I'm so passionate about them.
So juicy. There's so much depth to that, and that's what I
Mhm.
love about your work. It's not about just, like, how to date, how to get a date, how to, land a,
Yes.
partner. It just goes so, so deep. And, whether you're looking for a relationship or not at this time, even just
Mhm.
doing the work that you do with people is just such a, important work to do in the world just for our own development. So tell people a little bit about what's going on in your
Um,
world, because I know that there's some exciting things happening right now when it comes to
Yeah,
disruptive
so
dating.
I work with people in a couple of different ways, primarily through one-on-one containers because this work again is like deeply personal. But I've gotten this disruptive work, dating work to this place where there's a curriculum that goes with it. So there's these like specific steps that you move through to again build this skill set so that you can create this kind of relationship. And that's what my disruptive dating group program is all about. So, amazing content, group activities, so coaching calls, live workshops, so that you can feel so much less alone in this work. Because, again, especially if you're a high achiever, someone who's really driven, there's a lot of things that occupy your mind, and then to climb this mountain alone is really challenging. And so that's who I really created this method for. Um, yeah. And then I do a really amazing service called an energy assessment, which is, again, if you're just like, I don't know what's going on, why do I keep creating this outcome? This is like a one-off thing that you can really get so clear on what's blocking you and exactly what you can do about it. So, yeah.
Yes. All incredible offers. I know firsthand being there, building them all with you, beside you. So we're going to link all of Jacqueline's information in the show notes below. At a bare minimum, follow her on Instagram. Her content is so good, and whether you're in a relationship, dating, it's one of those accounts that you're like, okay, I want to just stay. I want to stay subscribed to this just for the content. So make sure you follow her. And Jacqueline, it's been such a
Thank
joy
you.
to have you on the podcast. As you said, it's like way overdue. And it's such a privilege to walk alongside you as you bring this really important work into the world. So thank you for having me in your journey, but also
Thank
for
you
the
so
work that
much,
you're doing.
Kristen. And honestly, I feel so grateful to have had you as a guide to get this work out there. So I know it's lived in me, but again, just like your support and getting it out has been incredible. So big props to you too. Such a collaborative. This was co-creation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. We will see all of you who were watching, listening in the next episode. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, if you can, please either like or subscribe to the show. It really does do us wonders. And share this episode with anyone in your life that you think could benefit. We'll see you in the next episode.